'Twas the night before Christmas, but Christmas was no more. No presents to deliver, no reindeer to soar. It's the year 8000, and nothing's the same. The world is a wasteland with too many horrors to name. Everyone around must kill to survive. That includes even Santa, to make it out alive. So snuggle in tight, kids, while I share with you a tale about a world like our own, if it was dropped into hell.
Oh, you're right, I'm agitated. Santa's done being nice.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Infinite Santa 8000 podcast. I'm Jessica Dwyer, and with me as always are my two elves, Michael and Greg. Hello guys, how are you?
Hey, ho, ho, ho.
I'm doing well.
Depending on when you're seeing this is being released the week of Christmas. So hopefully this is a little Christmas Eve treat for you guys. And I hope you have a good one this year, as always. And this episode is going to be all about the music and sound of Infinite Santa. I'm really excited because we're going to have a special guest come in here shortly to talk to us about how the film got the score that it has and rocks your socks off, blows your brains out with some great tunes. So first off, though, let's dig into the web series and the film with Mike and Greg and talk about how you guys came up with the soundtrack and the sound for Infinite Santa. I mean, it's kind of a given that it would be heavy metal since Santa himself is literally heavy metal. I'm punny. God damn.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Super funny.
Music's always been really important to me, and I know it is for Michael. And the Drive-In Horror Show, we spent a lot of time on every little short, and we had music in that too from a lot of bands. So I think as we were developing that, thinking along those lines and just using some of the talent we had, you know.
So did you have a specific sort of metal or music that you wanted for this? Like, you know, in the realm of, say, I want this to be more Iron Maiden, or I want this to be more White Zombie, or I want this to be more, you know, Kiss. Was there a certain sound that you wanted for it?
I mean, I remember sending Todd Megadeth's Rust in Peace.
Yeah.
And within a few bars, he's like, all right, I get it. You know.
So as it went along, did you, with the music itself, so with Drive-In Horror Show, you actually had lyrics, you actually had tunes. It wasn't such like a score. And I'm curious, I've always wondered about this, the difference between a soundtrack and a score and how you come up with both. So with Infinite Santa, what did you want the score to be?
Score. I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think there's two parts to it. With Infinite Santa, there's like the quiet parts, and then there's the metal. And like, I think today this is mainly focused on how we came up with the metal. And I think that was a really, I think that was kind of approached in two different ways, because what you said before really was important. This isn't like playing in a band, the music we need. It's to set a mood. And a lot of times there's other things going on, explosions, vocals, and we need just parts of the music. But you cannot make metal music in parts. You need people playing it live, and you need inspiration. So you kind of have to not work backwards, but not having a melody on top of it makes it like not a different beast, but like, kind of more just the energy, especially this. We knew the metal was energy, and whether it was Primus type, Metallica, Iron Maiden. I mean, the thing about Iron Maiden is they have great riffs, but a lot of their choruses, if you heard it without the singing, they're major. They're like Run to the Hills is major. Number of the Beast is major. Their music, Number of the Beast is Oh When the Saints Go Marching In. Oh When the Saints. That's Number of the Beast next time you hear it. So, but no, that's a great question. And it was really, like I saw Mike nodding, energy. We needed energy from the metal.
Well, and it's kind of neat to when you think about it with metal, it to me is more operatic and more theatrical than any other genre, really. I mean, you don't think of Wagner opera and like, the devil rising as Mephistopheles to, this is BJ McKay and this is my best friend Bear. Toot toot,
Yeah.
80s country when you think Mephistopheles rising out of the ground and coming to barter for your soul. You think, oh yeah, this is going to be like wailing, guitar riff and like choral like screaming in the background. So that's, it kind of lends itself to that. But you also with this is interesting, I was thinking about this, was Santa himself is Norse mythology, and it lends itself to that kind of very scoping type of music. So yeah, I think that's kind of neat that's what you did.
And the actual,
I think one other thing too is interesting. Like with a lot of creative things, all of this is true. And in terms of how we got to it, I think it was just messing around and finding something which fit, as we've said in previous episodes, is kind of the story of this project. We were totally independent, sitting around doing whatever we wanted. And it's like, okay, find something that fits, this fits, let's keep going. I do remember the first time we put the metal in, just being like, oh, this totally fits, like you think it will, but then you finally get it in front of you and you're just like, I couldn't have been happier. It was way better than I possibly could have imagined. I just thought it would be good, and then all of a sudden it was great.
Yep. And when you asked like how, I mean, sure, we had ideas, but from the drive-in horror show, there was a couple bands, and one of them, this band Hot Black, we became really good friends with them, and Todd, the guitar player, we reached out to him because his group was they're like Motorhead, as much as any other metal. So I kind of got together with him and Mike, and I can play you a little clip of he kind of came to my place. I have a little rig. This was in Boston. And we just kind of, before we went into a studio and the music that you hear in the web series became this is like where we started. I'm pretty sure Mike was there that day. And we just like, hey, play this, play that. No, this sounds good. And then I went back, and I'll post some of the bigger clips. I'll post a bunch in the thing because I don't want to bore you. But he would just play. And then some of those I clipped into little loops, and you'll recognize some of these. And then we went into a studio with a drummer, Josh Quadra, and he plays in he's in some big bands.
Lions at the Gate.
Lions at the Gate. He plays at Lions at the Gate now. He's just a monster. And but this was this is like what I took to the studio from his playing. And like, it's kind of like Anthony will say it. It's like finger painting. You grab little bits of what he played and then just played it back to him. So this is one of the first things that we came up with.
I love the fact that he had a meat cleaver in his hand. That was great.
So good.
I'm figuring out the web thing, so I couldn't figure out how to add audio, so I made a video, and those are the only 2 pictures of him I had.
Pretty damn good ones, Greg. I think Todd would be cool with it.
I think he'd be okay with that. Well, and you mentioned that it sounds like this was. I'm curious about the process here, and I'm sure our guest will give more insight into it as well. But it's like you kind of like Santa himself again. I keep coming back to that. You piecemealed this together from bits. Like, here's the guitar riff. Here's the drums that we want to put in here. Here's this. Here's what we want to do, and then you meshed it together. And I'm just curious about the process of picking that, and how long did that actually take, just for people that don't know the process of this.
So okay, so for the web series, I think Todd came over to my place once, and then I probably spent a day, 2 or 3, just going through it and finding the things. Then we went to Eric's studio with Josh and Todd, and they recorded a bunch of stuff that I think ended up being 9 tracks. That took about 3.5 hours. And then that was the basis for the music in the web series. And then this kind of leads to our guests, because when we went from the web series to the movie, I have a good friend, and we'll talk about our history. Anthony wasn't involved in the web series. He was busy. He's always busy with work. For the movie, we then took those same tracks and had Anthony, and he has a great engineer, Cariati Cetasia, and they kind of Anthony put some more guitars and synthesizers and bass. There wasn't a bass on it on the original ones. There wasn't really a lead, like noise lead and like atmospheric noises of like the filter things that go around. So Anthony kind of supersized it, which is a good introduction because I see him in the thing. So he's online. And
we're very high technical, the thing.
the offsets. Let me see if this works. There we go.
I'm in the show.
Hey, Anthony, how are you, man?
Hello.
I was in the green room.
The thing. The green room.
Awesome.
It's nice to
Well,
be
everybody,
here.
I want to welcome our musician maestro here, Mr. Anthony J Resta, who
Cheers.
gave life to the music of Infinite Santa 8000, the film.
Oh, it was fun. It was great fun. It's a major collaboration, though. There's a lot of cooks in the stirring up the pot. It just came out really great.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you about this, and with the guys as well. I do have to personally thank you for giving me, I believe you were part of Powerman 5000 Supernova, which rocked my socks off when it came out.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I was. It's not on my. Is it on my discography?
It is on your discography.
You know what's happened is this company. I just signed up for this service, and I've been actually deleting credits because they keep adding credits that are not mine, and I have to reach out to them. Like at one point, I had several billion streams, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right. So I'm slowly weeding out the wrong ones. I you know what happens? There was a soundtrack that I did work on that Powerman 5000 was a part of.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they lump it all together in this format called Museo AI. And so yeah, they're just getting the nuts and bolts of it together. But yeah, I'm a fan of the band, and
I love the song, and I'm sure with the amount of work that you've done, you've touched on a few things that I've listened to and enjoyed.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I love 9 Inch Nails. There's so much, industrial music and metal that I grew up with, everything from Black Sabbath to Skinny Puppy. So it's like I'm really, into all these different flavors.
Oh yeah, I've met Ogre, and he's fantastic. He's great, the lead from Skinny Puppy. So I'm very excited to talk to you about this. And we were just talking about when we brought you in about the aspects of basically taking all of these pieces and bringing them together to make a score. And we were also discussing the difference between a soundtrack and a score. Yep. And I just wanted to get your take on, when you came into this, how was it explained to you, first of all, what the film was, and also, when leading from that to wrapping your arms around everything to bring it all together.
Sure. I mean, we started off by, blowing up the original tracks that they had tracked with the drums and guitars. And like Greg had explained, I, added a lot of different, textures, weird synthesizers. Actually, Greg taught me about metal picks. I had never used a metal pick before. And I started banging on the guitar and like leaning it up against the wall and turning the pegs until the string broke. I mean, like, I always go head first into these things, and I look at these opportunities as a chance to grow. And Greg was really helpful in setting me in the right direction. And once we had all that stuff together, then I sent it back, and then that's where Michael and Greg would take the stems, which are like stereo submixes of all the different types of sounds, and then they could extract parts that they wanted to use for different parts of cues throughout the movie. So that's how that went down. Is that correct, Greg? Does that make sense?
Yes. We're having some noise, so I was beating my mic. But yes, I mean, that's a really important part of the whole process of soundtracking, especially with music like that's so complex. Like we were saying before, like we don't have vocals because we need to have Santa's vocals or someone's vocals. So having the stems, at times, if we had the full-on mix of guitars, bass, like you wouldn't be able to hear what we need to hear. But, because all the tracks were like cut together, they have the same energy. Sometimes we just use the drums, and that those frequencies are gone. Or sometimes we would just use the sound effects that are pulsating like that. And then when like the vocals stop, or not the vocals, the dialogue, you can impact with the whole music because everything's like lined up. So then you bring in the full mix. And I don't know how much, other than maybe like the intro, we ever used everything he gave us all at once, because it's almost, there's always like a sound effect or lightning that is going to just blow up. It's going to distort. There's actually too much noise going on.
Yeah.
So one thing that I was curious about too with this, because you worked with the guys on Drive-In Horror Show, what is the difference, if there is any, between doing an animated film and doing a live action film and the music for that? Because with an animated film, you've got way more, leeway in terms of what's going on screen, because it's all drawn. Nothing is having to be physically done. I'm just curious if there's a difference to you in that.
I think it's definitely dependent more upon like the subject matter and the storyline. That's going to really kind of, I mean, if an animated show is humorous, then that, or whimsical, that's obviously going to, translate to the music. So if something's dark and evil and sort of violent, that's going to, shape the storyline in a different direction musically. So I think they're very similar. It's all about the story,
Gotcha. And I think Greg had some you had some things that you wanted to share here with everybody.
Like I mean, Anthony and I's history goes back a long, long way, because we're both from Boston, and
not the band Boston.
And I mean, I used to play in a band called Sleight of Hand. I'll put the link in. We were signed to Sony Revolver. That's how I first met Anthony. Back in the early '90s in Boston.
Yep.
But I mean, Anthony at the time was working with like Extreme. He worked with like Tracy Bonham. He's worked with a lot of local people in Boston that like, there was kind of a scene of music, like the people that, like you said before, Power Man 5000, Rob Zombie, Letters to Cleo, Morphine, the Pixies. This was all the time when they came out of Boston. Like there was a really, really crazy music scene going on there that just Anthony was a big part of. With like, if not, he didn't work with every one of those groups, but he's had associations or have friends who's worked with all of them. And then there's the new kids. There's Marky Mark, all those pop people that Anthony's friendly with, all the
pop, like Top Choice Click, the hip hop side, there's it's a huge scene. Mark Sandman was a pretty good friend of mine, from Morphine. We used to day drink at the Middle East Cafe. And I have so many stories. It's just crazy. And this was before Morphine was, famous. So it's like he was just always a hero of mine, just an incredible poet, an incredible musician. Yeah, it's like that whole world was just such a great scene at that time. All the bands hanging out at TT and the Bears and the Middle East, and Bun Ratties and the Channel. It was just like a whole huge scene, and it was really great. Good times.
I was just curious too, just looking at the history, and it seems like it's very eclectic as well, that all the things that you've worked on. What attracted you to music when you were younger? What got you into it?
Oh, that's interesting. As a kid, I started off playing drums, and my mother was really heavily into jazz. I mean, like there would be records on, like she loved, Charlie Parker, Coltrane, Miles Davis, Dave Brubeck, Lionel Hampton. Like literally, it would just be one record all day. Like she just keep it going. We had a multiple record changer, and it just was around my house. And when I started playing drums, I'd been listening to that music so much for so long. It really came to me really quickly, and I just, I really just got so immersed in it, and that was my early foundation. And then that slowly morphed into prog rock as I got a little older. I started listening to Genesis and Yes and Frank Zappa and all that stuff. So it's just been an evolution, but it always had sort of a foundation in some experimental nature. I always loved, even in classical music, I loved Bartok's music for celeste and percussion that opens up the movie, Being John Malkovich. In fact, when I was watching that movie for the first time and the movie started with that intro to the piece, I was so upset I almost walked out, because it's like, this is my concerto. It was like I'd listened to it thousands of times, and it was like, it just really hurt me that it was going mainstream. So it's just kind of my upbringing.
That's great. Well, and Greg, do you want to play your video?
Oh yeah, yeah, and then progressively, Anthony, I kind of left music, went into other things, and we kind of drifted back together. I think it was at a Who tribute band. Our friend Jeff, he's a great keyboard, like Jeff
Yep.
Calder, and we met there, and then we just, like it wasn't whatever, and we just, me and Anthony just make music together. So when we did the film, The Drive-In Horror Show, we said there was a lot of music, and Anthony, one of his songs came in, and we made videos for it, and I'll just show you a little clip of it.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah.
I revolve around music and the people associated with it. And that means all the cute boys.
I caught them kissing in the cemetery. My second best friend and my first girl. I wanted to run him over, feel his bones crunching under the wheels of my car. But he got away 'cause he ran so fast. That's how I figured out love is a twisted melancholy disease.
I love it. That's the first time I've heard that, and I'm sold.
Feel his bones crunching under
the wheels.
It's all true. I mean, this is all stuff from my childhood.
I got a very big Thomas Dolby vibe there too. I was like, that's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Tell them who your girlfriend was hitting on.
Okay. Well, my second best friend, and her hooked up over a summer. I was really busy doing stuff. I was playing in a Jethro Tull tribute band, and I got really busy. And the next thing I know, I'm driving through this cemetery where we used to hang out, and then I see them making out in this gazebo. And I pulled up, and I'm like, I was horrified, because she was like my first love. I was absolutely devastated. And I did chase him in the cemetery with the 74 Toyota Celica. And I would have spent my life in prison if I had been able to catch him, because I wanted to run him over and I really tried. But he managed to, dodge through a bunch of headstones and get off the main path and got away. So, and that's the first verse. And then the second verse is I was at a New Kids on the Block awards show, and my date ended up in the lap of Joey McIntyre from the New Kids on the Block. And so I went home in an empty limousine. So it's all true. Everything in that song is real.
Oh my
I love it.
God. That's
So love is a
amazing.
twisted melancholy disease,
Oh, good Lord. That's
Fun
pretty,
stuff.
that's fantastic. We could spend a whole episode of the show just listening to stories, I bet, from him.
Oh,
Oh my
he has
And that
a
toy.
podcast. Yeah, he has a whole podcast of stories. Tell him. He's met Prince with Simon. He's hung out with Simon Le Bon.
I saw the Duran Duran stuff, and I was like, "Oh, I hate him. I hate him so much."
Oh man, I spent literally months with those guys. Literally months. Like from around 94 all the way up to like 2003 or so. I worked on probably between 40 and 50 songs easily.
Oh my God.
Don't drink with Simon.
Oh, don't drink with Simon, man. He
Will he
drinks
knock you under the
at that time
table?
he was drinking Cosmopolitans, like those pink martinis.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we just had this crazy bender, and it was like dawn when I got back, and the engineer I was working with, Bob St. John, said like he woke up to the smell of vodka. It was literally seeping out of my body, and I was like sick for days, and like Simon just strolls in like 5 o'clock. Okay, that's what's happening. What do you want to do tonight? Like totally cheery and upbeat. And he's like, "You left so early." The tots, they were so willing. It was just like, and I'm like, holy shit! I left at like 4:30. It's like.
Mike and I had a similar experience. At least I did with smoked bourbon.
Yeah.
Oh.
And,
God,
the next day you could still taste it and
Oh, yeah.
smell it.
Those were good times, though. It's a miracle that my liver still functions after all that. But
Oh my God, that's amazing.
You made it. You're here right now.
yeah,
Ah, jeez. Well, so I wanted to get a little bit more in depth into. I know Greg wanted to talk about too the use of the stems in terms of, like we just did a music video with Mike's son Jasper, where he was utilizing pieces of the soundtrack or the stems and creating content with it, which is pretty amazing. And I just wanted to hear your take on doing that and the logistics of that.
Are you talking to me?
You and Mike and Greg.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. You can chime in, Mike.
Yeah, Mike. Well,
Sure.
Because you use them in the most non-studio way,
Yeah. So two things. So for one, with Jasper, I had access to the original stems that we used back in the 2010s, and just took Anthony's lead off and had him just solo over it and just mess around with it. It was super fun. In terms of using them, like in the film, I like to just go back a tiny little bit to something we talked about before. So when you have a film, like we've mentioned, there's the score and a soundtrack. Score is funny. I've worked with a lot of musicians who will give something for a score. Anthony, you and I have talked about this. And like sometimes you might give something that's a 10, and it's like, no, I need this to be a 2. Because, and what I mean by that is, when you listen to a film, a lot of the times you're not even noticing if there is music, or if you are, it's like John Williams where you're supposed to, and it's really important to know how much to pull back. So a lot of the time using stems in a film, sometimes we'll just use the bass for a while, or sometimes just the drums, like Greg said. Sometimes you can go in, and because all the tracks are synced up with each other, you can basically turn one on one after another to build, that's what songs do anyway. That's what films do anyway. If you sit down and really listen to films, you'll start to pick up this stuff. And I think, as Greg said, there might be only one time in the Infinite Santa movie where we actually used all 4 tracks at once. I think it's during one of the big bunny fights at the end. And I listened the other day, and I think I can hear your solo stuff, Anthony. And because we turned that off a lot because it was weather stuff, but then we turned it on its own. So I do think if someone is working and has access to stems from a musician, it's almost better to not have as many as to have a lot, because it really makes you think, can I make a whole movie out of 9 songs? How do we drop it in different places and everything? So, I think it's a good skill for anyone who's working with music. And I know, Anthony, like when you and I have communicated, whether it was on this or other projects, it sounds like you learned a lot about how to work minimally. I don't know if that's something you want to touch on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I think as I've, grown older, the appreciation for space has just kind of developed more and more, and not just film music, but even in my productions. Like, I listen to stuff. I'll be in the supermarket and some song I worked on, 20 years ago comes on the radio, and it's like, sounds like a, calamity. And I'm like, oh shit. It's like, I get like nauseous, because it used to be about me and my toys. Listen to me. I got all these toys, and you're going to listen to every single one of them right now. But as you get older, you start to realize it's not so much about you, and it's more about like creating dynamics in space. And I've learned that, every year, I think incrementally, even the last 10 years, I feel like I keep going in that direction. I'll be in a mix and I'll literally shut off like maybe 25% of the tracks that I was listening to for the whole entire production, but having no attachment to them, like being open-minded enough to just shut them off and say goodbye to them. It's like a whole different mindset.
The only thing
go ahead.
Only thing I would add to that is one thing that Anthony and his engineer Cariati are just really good at is, like, I think, Mike, there might have been 5 stems per track or 6. It wasn't that many, but their stems, like if you put them at 0 all together, you're going to get the mix. Their stems are grouped well. They're guitars and they sound well. They're not like 20 raw tracks that don't have effects. They're exactly what the final mix is like. And I don't know exactly what Cariati and Anthony do to get that, but that is as important as any other part of it. It's not like they're giving us things that we have to work with. We just turn them on or off and they sound exactly like the mix they gave us with the effects. And because they're all in time, like when you turn one off on another thing, everything goes like it's all perfect, So that's why you go to someone like Anthony or Cariati, who really knows the audio side of it, because we have so much else going on with the animation and editing.
That brings up a thought about film music in general. Like, over the past couple of years, I've started doing some work on some trailers, and when I go to the movies now, I realize the trailers are so horribly loud and peak limited and clipped. They're designed just to create excitement, but they really burden your ears. And if you go to like a really good theater and the trailers like literally bash you over the head, and it's like you're like almost, oh my gosh. And then the movie comes on, and all of a sudden the audio opens up. It's big, it's wide, it's deep. It has all these frequencies, whereas the trailer is just pummeling you. Yeah. And what I've discovered is a lot of the engineers that are mixing trailers don't have a lot of experience in the real world of audio. They're more like just in trailers. And in trailers, it's just about banging you over the head as hard as you can. So that's something I've learned to like, whoa, I've had to readjust when I'm working with a well-known trailer composer who's, taking things that I'm using to add to cues. They'll keep saying, yeah, it needs to be bigger, it needs to be louder. It's like, it's just like, there's no such thing as too big or too loud when it comes to trailers. And in film music, that's not going to work. I mean, it might work at just one point in the movie, like for like a huge climax at the end, like it's the major battle where everybody's going to die or whatever, maybe. But even then, it still has to have a pro approach to the compression and the EQ and everything. You can't just be pummeling it, so it's a different art altogether.
Without a doubt.
Well, the one thing I noticed too, that I actually kind of dig this if it's done well. A lot of trailers, specifically, I've noticed this with like John Wick or with comic book films, that they are utilizing different takes on classic rock. And like, for example, the Batman with Rob Pattinson had a trailer that used a Nirvana song that was pared down and different and slowed. And I was curious what you think about, when that is a used product, when they use something like that to apply to a film. Have you had to do that? And if so, what generates your choice of song for something like that?
Well, generally they'll send you, like I did one that had a bunch of Kendrick Lamar stuff for this one cue, and they send you like a bunch of stuff, and then like you can mute things and bring things in, but they're looking for, there's like generally 3 sections where it's like, a loud part and then a super spatial part where almost everything drops out. So, and they're looking for these points where that the editors that work on these trailers have options to cut things. So they want as many breaks as possible strategically placed, within the dialogue, So it's kind of, it's different for everything, there's no rules really, but I noticed that. And then there's also, I think sometimes they really want to shut off as much as they can from the master that's owned by the record company, because there's all these legal issues and stuff. So if they can just get by with 1 or 2 things, it's different than using the entire master. I think, it's a different, like they negotiate a different fee or whatever. I don't really understand the business part of it, but that's what you'll notice a lot of times, that there's very little of the original track that you hear like on the record, or it'll be the whole thing. It's kind of one or the other, But
yeah, like the one that sticks out in my head because I just love his work is James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and they had, I think the band was called Rainbow, and he utilized their song for basically, it was through the entire trailer. And I was just curious too, when you're editing for something like that, do they send you the clips at all so you can?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
they send you the clips. Yeah.
So
and it's
you kind of have to find the beat to what they're showing in
yeah,
that.
it's like you're influenced by the speed of the what's going on, even the dialogue and stuff. And a lot of times there's like 10 people working on it at the same time, and everybody sends in stuff, and then their editors will grab little pieces of this and that and make a pastiche out of it. And then sometimes last minute they're like, Van Halen said we can't use Running with the Devil. Do you have a song with the word devil in it? It's all last minute stuff.
Or for a big movie, which I won't, you redo the intro to it, and then the editor decides to use the version before.
Yeah.
It's fixed,
Oh,
yes.
nice.
Yeah.
We won't mention the film because it probably wouldn't Academy Award.
Yeah. No, so it's a great credit, but it's like,
Yeah,
I got credit for something I
exactly.
didn't do.
Yep.
I have a specific question, Anthony. So, what if I encourage people to watch the web series for Infinite Santa and then the film and pay attention to the music, because it does sound very different. I noticed, Anthony, that for the film you added bass, which even it just adds so much in metal, and also your lead guitar. Can you talk about that a little, about why you did it and how you did it?
I think I just trying to make it more full frequency range, for options, and like I took Greg's lead on the metal pick was a big part of that sound. And I just experimented and tried different things. I think with the bass, I used a pick as well. It might not have been a metal pick, but just looking for different colors, and I think, like I said, 9 Inch Nails is a huge influence on me with that sort of that sound. But I can't, like Greg says, it's kind of like, people think I have a lot of times have this grand vision, and honestly, it's like I kind of just dive in, roll up my sleeves, and start playing and trying things. And literally, sometimes for the first 6 hours, it's like I'll try 100 things and none of them work, and then you're like, I need to go get a Mai Tai. That was my old method. Now it's coffee.
Until you met Simon.
Yeah, now it's coffee. No, but it is that it's a mad science at the same time, but at the same time, it's all pure emotion. It's, and you learn to go with your gut instincts. And you've made a million mistakes in the past, and then you, like, when you're going down a path that seems like it's headed towards one of those mistakes, you're like, okay, that's not going to go, So it's like, it's kind of based, for me, it's just experience that keeps getting piled on, and then you keep learning, hopefully, knock on wood,
So one thing I wanted to ask you, because you're talking about prog rock and you're talking about, just the experimental stuff, is I love Vince Clarke. I think that Erasure and his work is some of the most amazing stuff. And he has a studio at his house that looks like a spaceship. And I
I'm
was
very
just
familiar. Yeah. Love
oh,
it.
cool. Great, yay. I just was curious how, with that, with what he does, literally, it doesn't sound like there's any sort of instruments other than electronica involved with his stuff and a human voice. And I was just
Yep.
curious what you think about that kind of style, and have you utilized that in some of your work, and how you do that, how you
Yeah.
met
Well,
that.
absolutely. And when there's somebody like Vince Clarke, I mean, I'm a huge fan as well. And a lot of times, like even like the very early Hans Zimmer or Kraftwerk, they're utilizing controlled voltages for all the sounds. So it's a modular synthesizer, and there's no MIDI involved. Everything is completely instantaneous when you use controlled voltages to trigger sounds. There's no lag, there's no latency. So like when it's done properly with people that have the experience, everything is crazy tight in a weird way. I mean, you can play with the swing. Like New Order is another one. They'll in that certain era, when like the late 80s, when they just started really, modular synthesis has made a huge comeback in the past 5 years, and I've gotten pretty deeply into it. It's a rabbit hole, and it's
You don't
pretty
want to
crazy.
see my Spotify list at all.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. I mean, but it's like there's something about it. Like I've made cues where I didn't turn on the computer, and everything is being controlled, comes from a controlled voltage. Like I'll just give you, like, see all this stuff here.
Whoa. There's the spaceship.
Yeah.
His studio is amazing. Like he's
Over
got,
here, But see, nothing is coming from a computer. There's no MIDI. It's all just instantaneous voltages. Like nothing's quicker than electricity. So if you have that all working together, it's going to be drum tight. So it's a whole different sound.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, my husband and I kind of like I knew Erasure before, and then I learned more and more, and now I've gotten into there's this whole synth wave happening on Spotify now, and part of that's John Carpenter, who he and his son and his godson, I think it is, are just recreating that great sound, and there's a whole I didn't know there were so many bands that are doing that still, and new kids like they weren't even born when this was going on, and they're making this music, and it's so fantastic. So
I think Stranger Things.
Guys, I had to ask.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think Stranger Things really set the motion for those 80s analog synthesizers to come back into style. And there's companies like Arturia, who I work with a lot, who've made incredible digital emulations of these synthesizers, and they're very, very convincing, and it's become affordable to young people that are making music in their bedrooms. And so you're going to see a lot of that innovation happening, and it's like a retro thing, but there's also a futuristic side to it with all the new toys and new technology that's come out.
Well, when I interviewed John Carpenter, I asked him, what got you into synth? What was the thing that really made you want to do, use that? And he's like, money. It was just me and a keyboard.
Yeah.
That was what I didn't, for the original Halloween, I had no money. So it was me and a Casio, or, like, for example, and that's where it came from. And from there, now he's doing, tours and shows and everything with it, and creating more music. And it's amazing. And it's so versatile too, because you can make it happy poppy, or you can make it, oh God, I'm being chased by a killer that's going to rip my guts out, or an alien that's going to rip my head off.
Yeah.
Depending on how you decide to play it. And that's pretty awesome.
It's totally cool. Yeah. I love it. These guys got me into John Carpenter. I didn't really know anything about it. And Michael and Greg really are into that. And it's like, yeah, it's a whole different.
Well, I mean, Anthony, you've been making music like Kim, or you just didn't know you just needed to be pointed together. Like,
yeah.
Like I think, have you seen the thing that he directed and everything? That soundtrack is so perfect.
I have not. I think I have to check that out. What year did that come out?
You're gonna love
83.
It was 82.
Yeah.
I need to check.
Oh,
it
that's
out.
one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, I mean, it's what inspired a lot of the music. Like we talked about scoring. Like Carpenter, like he uses one keyboard sound. Like Mike knows, like there'll be sounds and it'll be called the bumper. And he's like, "Why is it called the bumper?" Because it goes bump 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 bump. You know, that's the
Very
sound.
high tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you put that boom 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 boom. It starts sounding evil. Boom
Yep.
boom 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 boom.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
Yeah, and it's so the thing with the thing is the fact that it's so isolating, and the music is so I'm looking for a word that can describe it, but just it fits it perfectly, like this sense of dread. I
Yep.
think is what it does, and the isolation and a heartbeat that
Yep.
just is back there, and that's what the whole film's about. So
That's
it's
cool.
pretty amazing, and that's what's so cool about Carpenter's style, and why I love synth is because it doesn't take a lot. It
Yep.
just
Yeah.
and it you just keep listening to it. Like, yeah.
It's an
And
imagination
it's
is
smooth.
what it comes from. The minimal toys sometimes makes even more creativity happen, because I call it nothing with everything, everything with nothing. Sometimes when you have limitations that you set on yourself, you can actually be more creative, and that's something I've known for a long time. Because I'll get thrown into situations where somebody calls me, "Hey, we need you at the studio. Can you just bring a couple of pedals and a couple of guitars, and we want you to put some stuff on this." And then so I look around and I grab a bunch of things and I throw them in the backseat of my car and I go there. And then what I end up coming up with in 3 hours sounds more interesting than what I might have done in a day at my studio with too many choices, like scratching my head going, I don't know where to begin, So sometimes less is more,
Well, and like Trent Reznor, he's doing soundtracks now, and the one that I really like, besides Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that he did Bones and All, and
Yep.
it was such a perfect sound for that movie, because it was almost Cro-Magnon in a way, because it was very like
Yep.
that's the best way I can describe it. It didn't sound like music per se as much, just fit this perfect, like, Bones and All. I mean,
Yep.
that's what it was, very primeval.
Yeah, I love his work. He's just brilliant. And Atticus too, who used to work for him. He does a lot of stuff now too.
Oh yeah, they're great. Well, guys, I think we're maxed out on our time. But Greg's like, please wrap up now.
No.
But I wanted to thank you, Anthony, for joining us.
Oh,
This was fantastic. I've heard all about you, and I now finally have gotten to meet you, and you're fantastic.
Great to meet you. Yeah, I'm honored to be
heard.
here. Great. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And Greg, Mike, thank you again. I want to take a chance to tell everybody again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Have a safe one, you guys. And I hope you enjoyed this early Christmas gift of the Infinite Santa 8000 podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And I got a special thing as we load out. This is if you've gotten the Blu-ray or have seen the new movie.
Oh, cool.
There is an Easter egg at the end, and this is the beginning of it with Anthony's music isolated. So enjoy this holiday present from us.
The Infinite Santa 8000 podcast is a Burnt Reindeer Films production. The podcast is produced by Greg Ansin, Michael Neel, and Jessica Dwyer. Music performed by Todd Cuff, Josh Quadra, Anthony J Resta, and Jasper Neal. For more information on the film and the podcast, please visit infinitesanta.com.